Hello and welcome to GFL Talk Radio. I'm your host, Jim, and I'm joined by Jason, as usual. It's been a long time since we've done one of these, Jason. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's glad to be back in the Madden 17 cycle here. Um, Glad to have our first podcast going now.
I am glad as well, and we were kind of talking about this a little bit off air, but I kind of echo your sentiments. I really like this game this year. I think they did a very good job. I think there's, a couple of things are behind, but it's a very good game overall.
Yeah, even though my team is not the greatest, and we've struggled a little bit so far, especially scoring points and defensively stopping other teams from scoring points. I do find it to be much more realistic and a lot more natural looking. Um, I, I I don't think ratings are quite where as far as how much I want them to come into play. I don't think we're there quite yet. And you made the comment about the offensive line is still kind of a step or two behind gap play for defensive line. Um, but I think there's a good balance between wide receiver cornerback interactions. Not every receiver is coming down with one-handed catches all the time, which I truly love. But yeah, I'm really digging this particular version of Madden much more than I have really on any of last gen and this current gen. I would say that you'd have to go back to the PS2 original Xbox days for me.
Wow, that's a big statement. It's a big statement. I think, outside of gameplay, I think for connected franchise mode, outside of the fact that they haven't given us the app and daddy leagues yet, they've done a real good job improving that aspect as well. I was one of those people who lived on 1 year, $1 million, $1.3 million contracts last year for backups, and that's not in this game this year. It's just not there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I'll definitely, being real big into daddy leagues and kind of the one that does a lot of the coding for it. I'll be completely honest. Not having daddy leagues, I should say, kind of pisses me off. Um, the fact that we are right at about a month of beyond release, and we still do not have the app. We don't have any word on uh, when it's coming out, what's going on with it. Um, we were kind of left in limbo here, and it sucks. Using Daddy Leagues was always a great tool, not just to look at stats and all that stuff, but it kind of also keeps you up to date as far as where we're at in the league. When are we going to advance? If an advance is going to be soon, or from a commissioner standpoint, looking at stats, following up with guys, and that kind of thing. And it's just it it does feel like this particular cycle has something missing, and it's that, and that really has kind of bugged me
I
about this
agree.
particular cycle.
I agree. And adding to your point, if you follow John White and Rex Dixon on Twitter, who are really the two guys that mainly get the brunt of the grief for this, they just keep pointing you back to their original statement. Well, we can't say anything else right now. And, that's very frustrating for the connected franchise community as a whole, not only GFL.
Hmm. Yeah, it's disappointing because it's kind of the same canned response of we're working on it. It'll be there soon. We're working on it. We're working on it. And it's kind of that lip service that we keep hearing, and we've got nothing still. So
Yeah, it's under promise, over deliver, I think, is their mantra, but it's very frustrating when you're being under promised when you're at that point. When they if they over deliver, then you're very happy, but for a while you're going to be upset.
yeah, and it just what it seems, and I could be completely off base with this, but what it seems like is that they are looking at how Daddy Leagues is making money off of a service that, quite frankly, EA has failed to deliver with their shoddy website that
Yeah,
they've
the
had.
connected franchise website was horrible. I mean, it was
Yeah,
absolutely atrocious.
and they touted it as being optimized for smart devices, which could be further from the truth. It actually worked a lot worse on a tablet or a smartphone than what it did on a PC. And that's not, when you say that you've optimized your CFM website specifically for those mobile devices, and then they actually end up not working that well on mobile devices, that's kind of a bad thing.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. Now that we've gotten our EA gripes out of the way,
Yes, yes.
move on to what's important here, the task at hand. Let's talk about where we are right now. I believe we're in week 7. So
Yes.
some of the teams have played their week 7 games. Some teams, like my Miami Dolphins, have not yet. We'll be playing later on today. But taking an early look at the AFC standings, there are no undefeated teams left in the AFC. The Texans, as usual, have a 5-1 record. The Broncos, per their usual as well, 5-1. The next team on this list is a little bit of a shocker. The Miami Dolphins have a 4-2 record currently.
Mm-hmm.
The Oakland Raiders, who are under new ownership, R.I.P. Tico, hello Skilligan.
Yes.
So Raiders, new guy. You got some big 4-2 shoes to fill. Hopefully you can dethrone those Broncos. That's a tough division out there with the Chiefs and Chargers. Speaking of the Chargers, 4-2. Chiefs 3-2.
Yep.
I set that up pretty well.
Yep.
Jaguars 3-2. Bengals 3-3. Ravens 3-3. Jets 3-3. They're still in the division in the AFC East as well. Bills 3-3. Pats 3-3. And then going down, you got the Browns at 2-4. The Steelers, who have really struggled this year, at 2-4. Colts at 2-4, and then the Titans at 1-5. So, any takeaways from that list of teams, Jason?
Well, you look at the list there, and obviously, at least to me, what a couple things stand out. We knew going in to the season, Texans were going to be good. We all know Jack as a pretty solid player. Same thing with Phil, and we knew the rosters that those guys had. The losing Peyton Manning for Phil, to me, was not that big of an issue because he actually played his best football last cycle without Peyton Manning. So, that to me, him being at 5-1, it really is not surprising. Same thing with Jack being at 5-1, not really a surprise. We kind of all knew that was going to happen. The fact that the weapons that he has on offense, everybody knows that Texans defense. So that we kind of, the top two teams, we kind of assumed. I would definitely agree with you. I don't think many people would have expected to say that, Jim, your Dolphins would be at 4-2 currently. I will say, though, you started the season off 0-2, and you've now rattled off 4 straight wins. So you've got some momentum going, and your defense is tough. That front line behind Ndamukong Suh, I've watched some of your games, and he's a monster. And I'm glad to see that. That's kind of one of the things with this cycle that I like, is that dominant D linemen, they look dominant. J.J. Watt looks dominant. And Ndamukong Suh is killing people, and it's kind of refreshing to see. One big thing that, looking at this, that it is a little surprising to me is the quality of play from the AFC West. You look at that, and you've got Broncos 5-1, Raiders 4-2, Chargers 4-2, Chiefs 3-2. Chiefs have won 3 in a row. Chargers have lost 2 in a row. All of those teams, the one big common denominator that they have right now is their defense. All of them are at the top as far as points against. Even though the Raiders aren't and the Chiefs aren't scoring much offensive points, they're barely outscoring their opponents, but their defenses are keeping them in check. And one thing to watch out for this week here, Justin Houston returns for the Chiefs. So they've gone 3-2 without quite possibly one of the best rush linebackers in the game. So
that's huge.
AFC beware. If the Chiefs offense can put something together, and get out ahead of their opponents, that defense is going to keep them in the game. And just to touch on this, after I played this gentleman last night, Rod and his Jaguars, that is probably one of the best defenses that I have gone up against from a passing standpoint. Those linebackers and that front four, good luck. Good luck everybody else in the AFC. That's all I'm going to say on that.
So that should be it should be an interesting AFC this year. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I think you hit a lot of it right on the head. I think the Texans we're going to be a very good team. Texans are going to be a very good team. The Chargers are one of those teams that I think are going to snag a wild card because they've got one of the lowest points allowed if they don't catch up to the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
So those are basically my takedowns of the AFC. Want to rattle off the NFC for us?
Yeah. So NFC, somewhat of a surprise, but then not so much of a surprise. Going into the cycle when we all knew that injuries were going to play a huge part especially in season 9 here, using the pre-existing option. And once Teddy Bridgewater went down, the jokes were all made that, oh, there goes the Vikings season, top 10 pick for her and all that. And he's getting the last laugh because he is now sitting at 6-0, and he's kicking everybody's ass. And a lot of it comes down to his defense, but kind of a surprising turn of events here is when you look at his offense, he actually has scored the most points in the entire league at 170 points in his first 6 games. So that to me is another big surprise, and the way that he's been able to utilize Sam Bradford, his receiving weapons, and then obviously giving the ball to Adrian Peterson. But a lot has to do with his defense and how well his defense has played, creating turnovers, getting to the quarterback, and putting the offense into position. Right behind him, you've got a slew of teams at 4-2, and kind of another surprise. You've got the 49ers, the Rams, Cowboys, and Panthers. Panthers are a good team. We all knew the Panthers were going to be pretty solid. I don't think quite everybody knew what to make of the NFC East and who was going to come out on top there, especially with with the Cowboys being decimated by injuries of Tony Romo, Jalen Smith, and now just in week 6, Ian had Des Bryant go down. He'll be out for about 6 weeks or so. Huge blow to that offense because Dak Prescott's actually been playing pretty well so far in the league, and Ian's done a pretty good job throwing the ball. So I would say that is somewhat of a surprise, but I think the biggest surprises to me are the 49ers and Rams sitting at 4-2. After that, you got the Eagles still sitting at 4-2, treading water there after Carson Wentz went down, I believe, in the preseason. Danielle's kind of used a makeshift group of quarterbacks between Chase Daniel and Johnny Manziel, of all people. He's not scoring any offense, but his defense is keeping him in the game. Everybody knew that front four was one of the best in the league, and they're definitely showing it, keeping him in games and keeping him ahead of teams. So it's going to be interesting watching that NFC East and how those teams play out. Especially between the Eagles and the Cowboys, and then you've got Dennis is still trying to get things going with the Redskins, and Rich has struggled a little bit, especially offensively, trying to get the ball moving now that Odell Beckham has been injured as well. So injuries are really hurting some of the playmakers in that division. So going down, obviously you got my Bears. We're at 3-3. We are currently are basically two different teams right now. The 3 wins, we've showed up and we've put 30 plus points up on the board. Defense has played well in those games. And then the 3 losses, we've put up about 14 points a game and given up close to 40. So we're kind of the Jekyll and Hyde team right now. Offensively, total, we scored 145 points, but we've also given up 145 points. And like I was telling you, Jim, before we went on air, my defense, we are the second best run defense in the league, and then we are tied for the worst pass defense in the league. So it's kind of tough right now. But I knew going in my secondary wasn't going to be the greatest, and we've definitely shown that we are pretty bad. So having three wins right now, I can't say that I'm disappointed. Yeah, sure, it sucks being at 500, but at the same time, I've won 3 games. It's actually 2 more than I thought I was going to win. So that's a positive, I guess. So kind of going down, we got.
So I got a question. So
Yeah.
I got a question. I'm looking at some of these defensive numbers for some of these NFC teams, and I want to know how in the world the Cardinals have given up 223 points.
I'm lost at words as far as how that has actually happened. I've only gotten a chance to see one of the Cardinals games, and that was against Buffalo. And I want to say that from what I saw, Sammy Watkins had a pretty good day out there against them. The Cardinals are missing Deion Buchanan, one of their top defensive studs.
No line.
But yeah, other than that, like, they are operating at full strength. I think the biggest issue that Cardinals team has had, and this is something that if you watch them in real life, so far, they've struggled in real life, and a lot of it has come down to turnovers, fumbles. Carson Palmer hasn't played bad. He's got 6 interceptions on the year, but I want to say that they just got done beating as a CPU team. They beat the Seahawks. So I think 3 or 4 of his touchdown passes came in that game alone. So from what I can tell, it's turnovers. Turnovers have really killed them and have put that defense into some tough situations. And that's kind of the story of some of the teams at the bottom of the list here in the NFC. When you look at the Giants, you look at the Redskins, who are all sitting at 2-4, the Falcons sitting at 2-4, Packers at 2-3. It really just comes down to turnovers. Those teams have got a lot of interceptions. Saints, Seahawks, Lions. That's really what it comes down to. And I could tell you firsthand from last night's game, giving up 2 pick sixes and a couple of other turnovers that allowed Rod to get inside my 30-yard line. You're not going to win games that way. And I think this particular year, Madden has really put an emphasis on taking care of the ball. And if you are losing the turnover battle, there's a very good chance you're probably going to lose the game. And I really think that that's what's going on right now with a lot of these teams that we expected to have much better records than what they do.
Yeah. I think my final takeaway from the NFC is real simple. The Vikings look like the real deal. They lead the NFC in points for and points against.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think the Vikings are they're the team to beat. They down the road, I believe they will end up being the number 1 seed and probably probably a Super Bowl favorite, just from the fact of the quality that they have on their roster from top to bottom, and specifically their defense. Their defense has really played well. You got guys like Anthony Barr, Trey Waynes as a young corner. Uh, they're just they're kicking ass and taking names, and it's right now it's like it's not even close. I would go so far to say that currently they are the best team. Like outside looking in, without like really digging deep into the stats and all of that, they are probably the best team in the league. And from a roster standpoint, they're definitely in the top five or six. And then Her's always been a good Madden player, so we kind of expected him to always be in the up at the top as far as records go. And here he is sitting at 6-0, and we're just over a third of the way through.
Yeah, I agree with where you're coming from. I think that, he's got a very good chance to win the NFC and then potentially represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, because there
True.
are some other teams like, the Panthers at 4-2, Niners surprisingly at 4-2, Cowboys obviously. They, like you talked about, get back some of their defensive guys from suspension slash pup list slash whatever else they have going on, because there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, Jim. The Cowboys themselves, they've been decimated not just by injuries, but also suspension, especially on their defense. So it'll be interesting to see here in the coming weeks as they get some of these guys like Randy Gregory back, DeMarcus Lawrence coming back, Jalen Smith coming back. These key young pieces that they have that are gonna make a difference and make an immediate impact. It's going to be interesting to see. I think that they will eventually make the playoffs, because the luck of that Danielle has had with his quarterbacks. I really I think Carson Wentz might even get hurt again, because that's just how things go for Danielle.
That's fair. I 100% understand where you're coming from with that, and he just doesn't have good luck with quarterbacks. That's just
No.
the truth. It's the truth. We love you, Danielle, but your luck with quarterbacks is not good.
Yeah.
So going through some of these things, and I'm just going to bring up some of the statistical leaders. Yeah. For the early season as far as individuals in the entire league. I'm bringing the information up now. So, as far as passing yards, we have a pretty consistent amount of quarterbacks that are right in the same area. Dak Prescott leads the league by like 19 yards in passing as far as passing yards.
Mm-hmm.
So he's at 1,698. Carson Palmer behind him, 1,679. Roethlisberger, Andrew Luck, and besides Prescott, I think the theme going there is these teams don't win very many games. When you get to Andy Dalton, Brett's 3-3, he's 500. So you've got that. Garoppolo for the Patriots, they are 3-3 as well. So I don't think a lot of these really good teams are all that high on the list, to be quite honest with you, as far as passing, yards goes. So yards don't really mean everything.
Yeah.
The best quarterback in the league as far as touchdowns to interceptions really this year has been Ryan Fitzpatrick, of all people.
Mm-hmm.
Interests me. 13 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Whereas you compare like a Roethlisberger, who has 12 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, Cam Newton, who's 11 touchdowns to 8, Paxton Lynch is 11-11. So I'm not sure how the Broncos have won 5 games with him being that turnover prone, but they have. Dak Prescott has 10 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, and the Cowboys have had a good season. So nobody else really that far ahead of the pack in that aspect. Let's look at some of the worst quarterbacks, I guess. 15 interceptions from Prescott, 15 from Cousins, 14 from Dalton, 12 from Stafford. So, that's kind of the top of the league as far as interceptions. you know, Jay Cutler, your quarterback, has 10 himself. I'm going through.
Yeah, and just as a side note to that, Cutler threw 6 in our game against the Jaguars. So we were sitting at a 7-4 ratio there until last night hit, and then the not
Kind of feel like the real life Jets on that one.
yeah, man. Not only did the wheels fall off of the wagon, but the horses ran away, and all of our luggage got stolen. So we pretty much just shit the bed last night, and it was unfortunate. But you know what, man? You got to put it behind you. We got the Packers this week, so we just got to move forward.
Yep. Well, moving on to kind of the running backs. Forsett leads the league in yards by almost 100, 672 yards. He's carried the ball 127 times already. That is a lot.
Yeah,
Almost as much as the 129 times Lamar Miller and Ty Gurley have touched the ball.
yeah. That is definitely a lot, and I remember hearing James say how he likes to run the ball, and he's a run first team, and he's going to continue to run it and run it and run it. And uh, the thing with Lamar Miller gets a lot of his touches due to the fact that the Texans defense is creating so many turnovers, and Jack is just running that many plays. Whereas the Ravens, that is their offense. James is running the ball behind that offensive line, behind Marshall Yanda, Ronnie Staley, like those guys. Like he's just pounding the ball, and he's got just over a 5-yard average. He's actually the only one who is averaging over 100 yards a game.
Yeah, this is huge. That's very huge.
Yep, and
I
you
mean,
look at his fumbles. He's got 1 fumble to 127 carries, and that's the strength of that team right there.
yeah, and a little bit of a shocker, I would say. With 83 carries, Matt Jones averaging 5.7 yards per carry is pretty amazing, even if the Redskins haven't been that great. Uh, looking at those numbers, you've got a running back like Melvin Gordon who's averaging 5.2 yards per carry, which is very good. David Johnson, 5 yards a carry. So I don't know what's going on in Arizona. They can't win these games with the running back playing well, and Carson Palmer has a positive touchdown to interception ratio, not to get too far off track here. McCoy is averaging 4.8 yards per carry. So we got some good running backs, averaging some decent yards per carry. But then you're starting to get in. Adrian Peterson's only averaging 3.9 yards per carry, which I'm sure has to be a career low for him.
Yep.
Latavius Murray at 3.8 and Lamar Miller at 3.9. So these guys, I'm sure, Le'Veon Bell 3.8, are going to look to get that number up a little bit in the second half. You always, as a running back, want to be above 4. 5 is obviously the goal, but you always want to be above 4.
Yeah.
So moving on. Oh, you want to say something before we move on?
I was just going to agree with you entirely. I mean, we've got a lot of guys who, I've heard people talk about the sliders and the running not being where it should be. Looking at a lot of these averages, we've got about 6 games per team, so we've got a good sample size here. I think we're right in line with exactly what real life running is like. I'm happy overall with what I'm seeing. I think we went through this adjustment period of learning how to run properly, and a lot of guys, we found who are trying to run the ball by just trying to outrun everybody and just spamming the speed button, or the turbo button, I should say, right out of the backfield. And that's something that gotten better at not doing. And I've actually started to run a lot better. I try to, so far this season, I've ran more of a committee style type of offense. I've got over 600 rushing yards between my 2 backs. I got one averaging 5.4 yards and one averaging 6.6. So we're seeing some teams who got good running offensive lines who are running the ball, and then the teams who do not have good offensive lines at running the ball, they're not able to run the ball. So it's kind of refreshing to see.
Fair enough. Yep, I agree with you there. So moving on to receivers, we've got DeAndre Hopkins leading the league in yards, 716, only on 28 catches. So he must be running a lot of go routes.
Yes.
Des Bryant is in there also. He's got 606 yards. Receptions wise, Antonio Brown leads the league. I played the Steelers recently. They try and get him involved very much, underneath, which is very good. So he's going to have a lot of catches this year. Surprised Gary Barnidge is the second leading receiver in the league as far as receptions. So that's an interesting stat as well. Go for
it. Just to kind of comment on Barnidge there, from what I've seen with the Browns, the Browns currently, they didn't have the first couple of weeks, or say the first 4 weeks, without having Josh Gordon. Their receivers, they're not that great as far as route runners go. They're big, they're long, they can get downfield vertically. So I think what you're seeing is Barnidge is that guy who, kind of like Antonio Brown, who runs a lot of those short to intermediate, medium type of routes. That's Barnidge for the Browns. And I think that's kind of the offense that Luke is going for, because he didn't have early on those threats to go down the field. But now he's got Gordon back, and I would say you'll start to see Barnidge's production taper off a little bit, possibly due to Gordon getting more targets now.
Yeah. Brandon Marshall leads the league with 7 touchdown receptions. Antonio Brown, Demaryius Thomas, and DeAndre Hopkins each have 6. So we've kind of been the Dez has 4. We've kind of been naming all the same guys for all this. Who the good receivers are. Moving on to defense, and one of my favorite things, tackles. Kevin Minter leads the league by 20 in tackles. So I'm assuming the Cardinals have taken a couple of sims there.
That, and then I also think it could also be the fact that the Cardinals are probably playing 2/3 of their game on defense.
Fair enough. That's right. They give up a lot of points, so you have to tackle someone eventually. Quarterback sacks. Joey Bosa has 12, which is insane. But guys got to stop holding the ball. J.J. Watt, 11.5. Vinny Curry, when you were talking about the Eagles defense, 11.5. Tyron Walker from the Lions, I'm kind of surprised he's high up on this list, 8. Michael Bennett at 8. Brandon Graham, 7.5. Fletcher Cox, 7. Malik Jackson, 7. Jeremy Mincey, 7. And a whole host of guys have 6 sacks, including Aaron Donald and Jarrell Casey. Moving on to interceptions. The interception leaders of the year is Rashad Jones from the Miami Dolphins, has 6 interceptions this year, including 2 interceptions of Ben Roethlisberger in our last game. There's my shameless plug of myself. Luke Kuechly has 5 for the Panthers. Sam Shields has 5 for the Packers. Jonathan Joseph 4 for the Texans. Mark Barron, who's kind of he's an outside linebacker, has 4 for the Rams. Amukamara with 4 for the Jags. I'm sure a couple of those came off of Jay Cutler. And Patrick
2 of them.
Yeah, Patrick Peterson has 4 as well. So, I guess Arizona does get some turnovers. Not to trash you or anything, Don. It's just that blows my mind. And looking at the last couple of things, I think forced fumbles is a huge thing this year that we have to look at that we didn't really look at as much last year. So I would like to talk about Tyron Walker from the Lions, who has 4 forced fumbles this year. Brandon Graham from the Eagles has 3. Vinny Curry from the Eagles has 3. So that's 6 between their 2 starting defensive ends. Defensive ends. Michael Bennett has 3. Rashad Jones has 2 forced fumbles. Are we hearing Defensive Player of the Year?
There you go.
And Ndamukong Suh has 2 forced fumbles. Telvin Smith and Coney Ely, Robert Quinn, Martin Merciless, Kendall Fuller. There's a lot of guys with 2. So we won't go through that entire list. Statistically, I think that's, the biggest thing. we're looking at right now, the only two players in the league to block a kick this year are Eric Weddle, which I don't know why he's playing on special teams, and Darian Thompson Giants. Uh, so defensively, the only thing, two touchdowns for Telvin Smith and Von Miller. The rest of them, we could go for days if I told you everyone
Yeah.
that. So that's as far as statistics. Individually, that's where we are at. You guys have a lot of time to change that, obviously, but I think we've got some pretty realistic numbers. Like a safety leading the league in interceptions is very slim, in my opinion.
Yeah. And, Jim, and to kind of comment on the sacks there, I've seen by looking at the last couple of game weeks and looking at some of those guys who are up at the top for total number of sacks, it's starting to taper off and it's starting to get down to normal levels. We had issues from the very beginning, and sure, sliders came into play a little bit on there, but you're right. There are some guys who like to just hold on to the ball and not necessarily read that a zone blitz is coming and then hitting the right open guy. I was
Counter. Sorry to interrupt you, but you can also counter a zone blitz if you slide your protection. You guys got to learn how to slide your protections.
yeah
And
yeah.
no, that's a big part this year.
If you are not sliding your protection, I would say at least 80 to 90% of the time, then you're not playing the right way. And what I mean by that is you have to not just find a zone blitz, but if you know that a defense has got a stud pass rusher, why are you not sliding your line towards that guy? Like JJ Watt, I would rather slide my line over to JJ Watt every single play and make somebody else on that front line make a play on me as opposed to JJ Watt.
Absolutely. I think that you also have to look at, for the first time in this game, and depending upon your scheme, running backs in pass protection, including keeping them in the block entirely. And then Madden has this wonderful new feature, if you guys haven't looked on hot routes, it's called check and release.
Mm-hmm.
Where they will basically chip a pass rusher and then release in order to give you an out. So
Yep.
that's something you guys might want to look at as well. It's built into some plays. You'll notice it, but it's definitely something that can become handy if you want someone to block and you're like, oh, I need my out in case I'm going to get killed.
Yes. Or if you see the backers, a lot of times people who are blitzing, those players, you can get those cues, those visual cues of how they line up and kind of how they set themselves up in their defensive stance. When you see that, you got to watch for it, and you have to have your safety valve or keep somebody in the block if you're trying to push the ball downfield. And there's a lot of guys that I've seen so far that do utilize the zone blitzing plays to try to get pressure, and that's fine. But from an offensive standpoint, you have, like, when you're doing your training, you have to look at the type of play distribution or that your opponent uses, and if you're not calling your plays accordingly to combat what they're trying to do, you're going to do yourself a disservice, and you're going to get mad and wonder why things aren't going the way that you'd like them to.
That's fair. I 100% agree with you there, man. I think that looking at it, you're just going to have to learn the game a little bit more. I think that we're still in the learning stages of this game for all of us.
Oh,
we
absolutely.
play before we start, but you learn the most while you're playing during the league because you learn it on the sliders, you learn all that stuff. And, everybody will improve. I think that we saw last year that league parity was, there were some guys that were repeat, but, there were also guys who weren't there last year and were there the next year. So there's parity, and we'll all get to a point where I think we're comfortable.
Yep.
So that's how I feel about that.
Yep.
So would you like to move on to picking? I believe we were talking about doing the draft, a little bit of a draft review.
Yeah. So, we talked about early on, the fact that Madden now allows us to edit player names, uh, how we are going to handle um, incorporating real collegiate players into the league. I was pretty excited that originally I was able to figure out a way of doing that, like changing the names and all of that mid-season. Unfortunately, the devs they decided that they were going to eliminate that workaround, which I can understand because you did have the ability to change ratings. If they would have just removed the ability to change ratings but left the ability to change names, I would have been ecstatic for this. But unfortunately, they didn't. So we're left up to being able to just do it after the fact. So we originally were talking about allowing guys to when they draft a player in the first round to give them the opportunity to say, like, I want this guy to be player X. Well, we figured that that would be a little too tedious and maybe a little too time consuming to do all of that. So what we're doing is we're going to have a spreadsheet for all of the really like the top 4 or 5, maybe a few more here or there, depending on the position. But we'll have them listed, and then we'll have their in-game fake player name, and then what their real name is going to be. So I'll give you an example here of looking at quarterbacks. So we have Stanley Fortin is the in-game top projected first-round quarterback. Um, I'm using Walter Football as kind of my base here, as far as how we're going to name these guys. And don't worry, we're going to change skin tones, height, weight, and if they're a pocket passer, we'll leave them at that. If they're more of a mobile QB, we'll change that accordingly. But ratings themselves, we're not going to mess with. So just wanted to like throw that out there. So anyways, Stanley Fortin, I have him set to be Deshaun Watson. And the reason why I have him as number 1 as opposed to where Walter Football has got Deshaun Kaiser out of Notre Dame is because the number 2 quarterback, Jarrett Spadola, he already has Notre Dame listed as his college. So I'm going to go ahead and leave him there, and we will make him to be Deshaun Kaiser.
Yeah,
And
so
then,
there's a bit of practicality involved in it. I mean, that's
yeah. So yeah, we're just trying to and kind of moving on down where Lane Newell is the mobile QB out of Nebraska. I'm gonna go ahead and make him Lamar Jackson from Louisville, even though Lamar Jackson won't quite actually have that extra year of eligibility needed to be in the NFL draft. I'm just gonna go ahead and put him in there because he is a first round rated QB and is mobile. So I thought that might be a good fit. The Nicholas Legler is going to be Brad Kaya, and Nick Scherf is going to be Chad Kelly. So that way, what'll end up happening is once we get out of the draft, we will start. Each team will be able to change. I believe you can change your names. If you can't, that's something that the commissioners will do quickly, as opposed to having to sit and wait for somebody to tell us who they want that player to be. This gives us the opportunity to not only get all of the top rated projected guys into the game, but to have something already laid out as far as a frame of reference to quickly get those names and those the height and weight changed correctly. So that way, once we hit preseason, you guys are going to be able to see all of those players immediately.
yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. That's some good stuff. I'm glad that, you guys get to incorporate a little bit of that type of stuff in there. We're never actually going to see these guys until next year, so we don't know what they'll actually be rated in Madden. So there's no reason to get very into the semantics on that or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Exactly, and the other thing that we can work with people with, and something that the commissioners will have to talk about, obviously, if, say, for example, if a top-rated player, let me get into uh, the prospects here. So um, we all know that Leonard Fournette is probably going to be uh, the um, the top-rated running back coming into the league. So
Sure, he's gone after all the stuff that transpired with LSU. Just throwing that in there.
yeah, exactly. He's going to be gone. So you look at Miles Vernon. In game is the #1 rated halfback, and he's listed as a speed back. We'll change that. If his strength rating is like 40 and his speed is like 98, like maybe we can work something out to where we change, because we don't know what his 40 rating is going to be and what all of those physical attributes are going to be. So if he's like rated like that, we may just go ahead and switch him to like Dalvin Cook, and then put Leonard Fournette as like Juan Ruff, who's listed as a power back, just so that ratings match up. We've got a little bit of leeway that's on there as far as what we can do. So we're willing to work with people and try to get some of these guys who are going to be these big name players coming into the draft, trying to get them to at least resemble somewhat of what their real life counterparts are going to be.
Fair enough. The thing I was worried about for myself personally was looking at it as like, am I actually scouting the player that I'm scouting, or am I scouting, Leonard Fournette, or am I scouting Dalvin Cook, or
Exactly.
You get what I'm saying? So that was in my own mind, that was my confusion. And you did a good job clearing that up. Basically saying you guys aren't really messing with the ratings. You just want the player's likeness and height and weight and that type of stuff to be
Mm-hmm.
out there, and that's what you want to do. So, good explanation. I think it'll be a fun feature for at least for this season, and I hope everyone enjoys it.
Yeah, and it'll be cool, seeing guys like Leonard Fournette and Nick Chubb and some of those guys who we're watching on Saturdays, and see how they transition into our virtual league here. I used to do
Go back to 360 days of the NCAA.
yeah. I remember being back on the 360 and some of those online leagues, and I used to do all of the draft classes. I would sim godless amount of hours worth of seasons just to get the right draft classes, and it always added an extra kind of layer of fun to the league, seeing some of these young guys come in, and it sucks not being able to see their names pop up and all that during the draft, but at least this way we have an idea of, okay, like this player here is actually this player, so I am drafting Christian McCaffrey, or something to that effect. So I think it's going to be cool for the league, especially this very first draft here.
Yeah, I'm real glad. It sounds like a great feature. Sounds like a great feature. Well, moving on from the draft. Do you have a list, or actually, I don't know if we're moving on from the draft. Do we have a list of anything that we wanted to do with the draft, or are we moving to the next subject?
What's that?
Did we have a list for the draft that we were looking at going down, or we
Yeah, yeah. I've already started on it. I've gone through so far quarterbacks and running backs. I'm actually in the middle of wide receivers currently. And as the season goes on, you know how draft prospect lists in real life, how they change. It could be fluid a little bit. So I'll keep updating it. I may have to add players to it as we go. But yeah, that'll be a Google spreadsheet, just like the 3+1 contracts are laid out. It'll be something that everybody will be able to see, and everyone will be able to kind of access that and have an idea of what's going on.
good stuff? Yeah. Speaking of the 3+1, it's if you guys are interested in who maybe some of the big time free agents might be, you might want to take a look at that and
Yes.
plan for it.
Yes, we do have two teams so far who have reached their 3 signings. And if you guys are listening, that is the Patriots and the Packers. So those 2 teams, you guys are only down to your franchise tag. I've updated them all as of like an hour ago, but I know some guys were posting in the chat room that they have made some signings. I want to say like the Saints signed a couple of guys, so I'll get those changed up and get those added on for everybody. So I try to keep that updated each week, so that way everybody can kind of stay up to date with it. And keep in mind that if you guys if you sign a 4th player, the commissioner's office will change their contract back, and we will kind of use some shit for it too. So
yeah, I was about to ask you, is there any type of like, repeat offender rule or anything like that? Not trying to like make it extra work for you guys, but I'm just wondering if there's any, anything like that.
We haven't gotten that far as that kind of stuff goes when it comes to contracts and signings and all of that stuff. Because I guess we don't foresee there to be any problems, but if there is, the 5 of us will get together and we will probably come up with something to keep people from acting like a bunch of fools.
That's all you can ask for. That's all you.
Yeah. So it's why we put the link for the spreadsheet in the news chat so everybody sees it. The best that we can do is just keep reminding you, and if you force our hand, you force our hand. That's just kind of how it goes.
And for anybody that doesn't know this, you can download the Sheets app, which is the Google Sheets app for your phone, and you can look at that list anytime on your phone. So you
Yep.
can have it wherever you go.
Yep, and if you can actually even click on the link in the news tab, and it'll always show you the most updated version, because the link doesn't change. It's always the same link, so you'll always be able to have the updated version at the tips of your finger.
Yep, that's also some awesome stuff. 3+1. I was a big advocate for it. I love the rule. So that is the majority of what we had to go through.
Yep.
So I guess let's go with some closing remarks, Jason. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we kind of wrap things up here?
Keep an eye on the news chat, because we're also we are going to be announcing a throwback week. I don't think I could be wrong. I'd have to talk to the other commissioners, but I don't think we've narrowed down exactly the date or the game week that we're gonna do this. I think we were waiting to get out of
5 weeks.
The October month.
Oh, yeah.
Because the pink kind of distracts from the overall look of the throwback uniform. So we'll announce something here shortly. I would imagine it might be like after week 10 or so. But yeah, we'll make an announcement on that.
From 12 finished 5 weeks. Just bringing that out there. If everybody wants to participate, because I always know if you do like throwback week on the week that someone that's a bye week, someone always does something.
Yeah, and that's probably what we'll end up doing, and we'll look at it and try to find where we're also looking at like big matchups too. Like division games are always some of the better games to wear throwbacks on, that kind of thing. So we're always
that was a good idea. That was fun.
Yeah, so we're always taking a look at that. We'll probably have another Color Rush week for every team to wear Color Rush instead of just the Thursday games. I've noticed a lot of teams are wearing them kind of whenever they want. I would advise let's kind of make that something that's like a special thing. But if you want to wear them, I guess it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, other than that, I mean,
opponent because they think they're hideous.
Yeah, yeah. The only other thing that I could really say when it comes to like the uniforms and stuff is the home team always has the choice of what uniforms are to be worn as far as color goes. So before you guys ready up on both sides, please make sure that you check the colors.
Please make sure you check the colors and make sure that the away team is not wearing the same color as the home team is what he was trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. Like everybody should know at this point, because this is kind of common knowledge now for the last like 3 decades, that the Cowboys wear white at home. So nobody else should be wearing white when they play the Cowboys in Arlington. That kind of thing. Like, don't be silly. But other than that, man, I mean, I think we've gotten off to a good start. We're already in week 7. Things have been pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, things have been pretty good. We're looking forward to a good, finish of the first half of the season and getting on to the second half of the season, getting to, the first playoffs and all of that. And I'm sure we'll be back before the first playoffs to bring you some more and some more takes of ours.
Yep. And actually, I do have one other thing. This is kind of more of a commissioner's office type of announcement here. So, guys, if you have a grievance that is in game, and I'll use an example like a rule was broken and it resulted in a touchdown or anything along those lines, that where a rule is broken and it becomes a big play, please pause the game. And if you are the one who has been accused of a rule violation, do not start the pause countdown and get back into the game until a commissioner has weighed in on what has happened and has given you a ruling. I'm going to use this as an example, and I don't want to call out anybody, but we did just recently have an issue with the Chiefs and Raiders game. And in that particular instance, if someone has been accused of breaking a rule, my advice is to stop the stream while you're in the pause screen, because it will then go to the archive on Twitch. A commissioner will then be able to review to see what had happened if they were not watching prior. We will then make a decision on what to do from that point on. So that way, we do not have guys quitting a game feel like they got screwed out of a touchdown. Saying that someone did get screwed or they didn't get screwed, because that really isn't the issue. The issue more is how to move forward if a rule violation is being either accused or has actually happened. So pause the game. We come to an agreement on how to proceed forward, and then we proceed forward like men. We don't quit. We don't force our opponents to uh, sit and watch the game countdown, and then we force them to play again and pretend like nothing happened. We pause the game and we talk about what we're doing now. That's all I got.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So if you guys are listening, that's his advice, and that's what you should do.
Yes, get with a commissioner, and there's 5 of us. You will. There's a very good chance that no matter what time of the day it is, you will find one of us available. I'm usually
So,
available at night.
uh-huh. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here on the spot here a little bit about something that we didn't plan to talk about.
Yeah,
We all love the creation of GFL Division Two. I got to say though, GFL Division Two is kind of with some of the guys coming up, it's kind of lagging behind. Do you guys have any plans of trying to kind of purge who's not playing in there and just go, all right, these are the 15 guys that are playing, or these are the 20 guys that are playing right now, and we'll try and see if we can get a couple more in here who are interested. Because I noticed there's not to call any names out, but there are a couple of GFL One members who are in the chat who aren't even playing games in there anymore. You know what I mean? So if they're not
yeah,
part of the solution, part of the problem type thing.
yeah. That that has been something that has weighed on me a little bit, as far as kind of what to do going forward with the Division II league. Um, obviously you guys have seen where we have promoted some of those guys up to the GFL, I guess Division I, if you will. And we have other guys who new and vets who aren't playing, myself included. Um, a lot of it comes down to schedule, not having enough time to be in multiple leagues, which is understandable. Like I was telling you, Jim, earlier, I work a split shift. I work 9 to 1 and then again 5 to 9. I come home, try to be dad, try to do things, around the house, all that. So like I can understand where time is at a premium, especially with the type of time it takes to run a top tier league like we are. So going forward, that's something that I got to talk with the other commissioners about. Um, for the most part, I think we've got about 4 or 5 other guys who we've contacted to get into that league who have not responded. And then there's like 2 more to contact who have reached out to me to join the league. So it's kind of a more of a matter of getting organized again with that particular league and getting it back on track. It so far, I think it's served a good purpose of getting some of these newer guys acclimated to our rules in a setting that is a little bit more laxed compared to what GFL is. Because you get to GFL Division I, you break a rule, we come down on you. It's just that's just how it is. We're not going to have guys, especially new guys, break rules, win a game, and take away from a potential playoff spot from somebody who is following the rules. Whereas Division II, its whole purpose was to get those guys up to speed. So that is something that we got to discuss, and we got to figure out. Number one,
Yeah,
is it worth continuing?
yeah. I think it's worth continuing if I'm throwing my 2 cents in here, just my outside opinion. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
worth continuing. I think that one of the things that you guys got to try and stress a little bit to newer guys is that, and I've had this experience with people in GFL Division II myself, that when they screw up and I send them a message, I'm very nice about it. It's like, hey man, you screwed this up, and then it's no, I didn't. It's like, okay, guys, I'm playing in this league, Division II league, to help you so that you can eventually be in the
Yes.
Division I league. And the only reason I'm sending you this is so that you can continue to play. If I send it to the commissioner, they're going to tell you the same exact thing. It's kind of the reason
Yep.
I'm playing in the league. You know what I mean? It's to try and help you guys out.
Yeah. Yeah. People definitely need to have an open mind, because let's be honest, not everybody is going to have this, especially the new guys, aren't going to have the same interpretation of a rule as what the vast majority of everybody else who's been doing this for now going on our 9th season. So yeah, I completely agree with you, and I do think it is worth it. Um, but at the same time, we got to be more consistent with advances, staying on guys about playing games, and coaching guys, because that's really what that league is for. It's a coaching league. It's all of us coaching these new guys on what we expect from a gameplay standpoint. And some of the guys who have been promoted, they get it, and I think that they've transitioned pretty well. There are some other guys who I know that are still in Division II that want to play, but now feel as if because the main league has started, that they're kind of getting the shaft. And unfortunately, that is true to an extent.
Well, I
I
agree, which is why I brought this up in the first place.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did, because it's something that I've thought about, and I feel bad for some of those guys who are wanting to play and who are wanting to get moved up. Um, at this point, they're not necessarily getting the opportunity because they're not getting the practice, and we definitely have got to do a better job in that front of that particular league, and keeping it up to date and keeping it going. So I would imagine that this here is going to spur conversation about that, especially within the commissioners group. And going forward, we're going to see what we can do to keep that league going. If we have to go to like 3-day advances on that to make sure that everybody can have the time to play, that could be an option. Or like
Yeah,
having specific day advances, like we advance, say, Monday and Thursday, and it just stays consistent
yeah, I
all the
think that
time.
makes sense. I think the only thing that from that standpoint is the thing that I like about playing 48 hours over there is I don't think you want to take someone from playing twice a week to three and a half, 4 times a week. I think
Yeah,
that that's kind of a big change. So I think that's something that you guys might want to look at and consider. But I understand the other side of the coin because I thought about that myself before I asked the question. Maybe would advancing twice a week make more sense for that league for those guys because they're just trying to figure it out. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. And that's just an idea that actually just popped in my head as we were discussing this. So, um, it, it really comes down to just kind of talking with everybody and getting ideas. That's one thing that I think we've always done well at, is getting ideas from a lot of people and taking those ideas and that feedback and trying to mold it into something that everybody can agree upon. Because when you've got 32 guys in one league, and then you add in, say, another 10 or 12 that are playing in a second league, and you're getting all of these opinions going, sometimes I shouldn't say sometimes, it's pretty tough getting everybody to agree. So trying to find a common ground as far as what we can do, I think, is going to be key. But I definitely think we've got to keep that league going, because so far we've already got, what, I think it's 4 guys, maybe 3, that we've promoted already into the main league. Like James is one of them who's doing pretty well so far. And we just promoted Skilligan and Drew Stroudy into the main league as well. So
Mhm.
it's definitely working for us. We just have to stay consistent with it.
I agree, and I think even if it's even if it's one of those things where maybe some Division One members don't play, as many Division One members don't play in it anymore because it's just they don't have the time for it. I think they just have to evaluate that. And as a whole,
Yeah.
I think in order to keep the league moving, because it's a great thing if you can have a constant pipeline of people if someone leaves. I mean,
Yep.
that's really the best thing you can do. So I think you guys are doing good with that. So,
Yeah.
congratulations.
It's definitely much better than the quote unquote waiting list, because you get these guys who you put on a waiting list that they never see. They don't know what number they are on the waiting list. They're not playing in the environment that has the same rules that the league has. So then you promote that type of guy to the main league. You're kind of, they're at a disadvantage because they haven't had the practice with the rule set and the gameplay style that we want. So they're bound to make a mistake and piss off their opponent. And it's not really their fault, because they're just not used to it.
Oh, of course, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, yeah, we all have. And the other thing that it really kind of eliminates is having these tryout games that guys
Which I
play.
hated.
Yeah, yeah, we can sit here and say that we absolutely hated those, because we know that firsthand. Because guys always play great in their tryout game, and then you get them in the season, and it's like, all right, let's see what I can get away with. And
I don't
then
know how many.
everyone's asking,
I don't know how many times I got. Did this a tryout game? Of course, the guy got a tryout game.
exactly, and then they're like, who gave this guy a tryout? Who is this guy? And you're like, shit,
Yeah,
that was me.
yeah. Most of the time, me scratching my head, going, "Oh man, oh well."
Yeah, so I mean, it's really just a matter of trying to figure out how we can make this um, viable and continue on. I think we see the positive in what it's done so far. It's now just a matter of continuing it and keeping it going and staying consistent with it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'm going to ask you one more question. It's just one that popped into my head, and it's kind of one of those way far down the line things. With the changes in the off season specifically, which I've done a little bit of off season, simming myself and offline and tested it a little bit. And with the big free agents most of the time signing in the first advance, I think that sniping takes a free agent sniping specifically takes a new turn. I think that last year you just had to worry about the third advance. Now everybody has to worry about every advance.
Yeah, I think one thing that I thought worked really well was the variable advance times that we went with last year, where we gave basically guys like a 4-hour range that, like, hey, advance might happen here, and then we just advanced without really anybody knowing what was going on. And I thought that actually worked pretty well, because you did not have those guys who say we were advancing at 10 o'clock, they're on at 9:58 Eastern, throwing out all of these ridiculous bids because because sniping was a thing. We all know it was a thing. We saw it firsthand.
Yeah. Trust me, I advanced one time and got sniped for a player.
Yeah, so it's happened, and it wasn't just last cycle. In every league that I have ever been in, that has always been a problem. And
100% for me too. Me too. Every
yeah,
league.
yeah, every league it's been a problem. I think the bidding system is a little bit better in this particular Madden, as far as how it like weighs each bid and gives each team points. But that hasn't necessarily eliminated the sniping problem altogether. It's still going to be there. So I sit and like make this decision all on my own, just because the commissioners haven't really talked about it. But
Fair enough. It's kind of just thoughts. So it's still to be determined.
yeah, it's definitely still to be determined. But what I would say is, do not be surprised if we do come out and say that, like, we are going to have variable advance times.
So my tip to everybody is to pay attention very closely to the off-season schedule.
Yeah, and get on there and put in your bids as soon as possible. And just continue to check. And we're not going to announce that, like, hey, we're advancing now. It's just going to happen, because we don't want to have that kind of stuff take place. So, I mean, like I said, we'll talk as a commissioners group and see how we're going to do this. But I'm thinking we will probably have the variable times again.
And reading chat, Cowboys fans, calm down. Eli Manning is still the best quarterback in that division by far. He has 2 Super Bowl rings. So, on that note, alienate the Cowboys fans. I think that it's signing off time for GFL Talk Radio, episode 1. We got a pretty good episode in. If my mic screwed up at all, I'm sorry, guys. But I'm glad that we're doing this again. Oh, shush, Cody, don't fight me.
Jeez. Yeah, man, we'll definitely have to do another one here sooner rather than later.
You and I will get together after this, and we'll determine when that's going to be.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening to the first episode, and we're signing off now. Have a great day.